My mom said I'd embarrass the family if I showed up. 3 hours later, they learned who I am and came crawling back. I smiled. Then sent a lawyer. I wasn't planning to stay long, just a couple days before Mom's birthday to help out like always, run errands, set up chairs, pick up her favorite almond cake from the bakery on 5th. The same one I'd been getting for years. That's all. No big announcement, no drama. I even booked the flight early and took time off from work. I hadn't been back home in a while, but I didn't think much of it. I still called once in a while. Still paid the bills. I still played my part even if that part was mostly off stage, out of sight. So I called Dad, like I always did. Just to let them know I'd be flying in on the 14th. He picked up on the second ring. No hello. Just, yeah? I told him the plan. I'd land Thursday morning, could help set things up. I figured he'd grumble about the flight cost or ask what time I'd arrive. Instead, there was silence. Then came the shift in his voice. Flat. Careful. Ryan. Maybe you shouldn't come this year. At first I thought I misheard him. I asked him to repeat that. Your sister's bringing her boyfriend. Big guy. Corporate lawyer. Really sharp. Speaks well. We just want everything to go smoothly. My mouth went dry. I said nothing. He kept going. You know how people judge your situation. It's not easy to explain. My situation. I co-founded a tech investment firm that specializes in clean energy. Our last 2 rounds of funding crossed 8 figures. I don't wear suits, but I sign contracts that keep people employed. I don't talk about it much, not with them, because every time I tried, they'd tilt their heads and say something like, "So, you fix computers?" It wasn't ignorance. It was a dismissal. But this wasn't about misunderstanding. This was about image. Look, he said. If you insist on coming, don't call me your father. That was the last thing he said before hanging up. The room was quiet after that. I just stood there, holding the phone like it might ring again with a punchline. It didn't. I walked to the kitchen and made coffee with the same hands that had wired nearly $10,000 to their household over the past 2 years. Quiet payments. No reminders. No recognition. Just electricity, water, and the internet. Every month. On time. I opened my banking app, scrolled through the transactions. Power, $122. Water, $83. Internet, $146. And so on. Line after line after line. $9,842.17. That's what I'd paid for the privilege of being invisible. That night I canceled everything. It wasn't some vengeful tantrum. I didn't throw anything. I didn't yell. I just ended the payments. Each one by one. Not to hurt them, just to stop bleeding for people who wouldn't even let me in the house. I sat with the silence that followed. Let it wrap around me like an old coat. It didn't feel good. But it felt done. A week passed. Then came the first message. Mom. Hi honey, the internet bill came in higher than usual this month. Can you cover it? Just this one time. Just this one time. Like I hadn't done it 27 times already. I didn't reply. The day of the party came like any other. I made coffee, read some reports. Took a client call around 3. Then my phone started buzzing. 4:03 p.m. Mom calling. Declined. 4:07 p.m. Dad calling. Ignored. 4:11 p.m. Jessica texting. The internet's down. Guests are arriving. What's happening? 4:14 p.m. Dad. Power's off. Can't cook. This is serious, Ryan. 4:17 p.m. Jessica again. There's no water. People are here. What are you doing? I looked at the messages, set the phone down, and took another sip of my coffee. They weren't calling to invite me. They were calling because nobody else knew where the circuit box was. It wasn't until 5:20 p.m. that I got FaceTime from Aunt Linda. She was one of the only relatives who ever spoke to me like a person, not a problem. So I answered. She was in the kitchen. Dim lighting. Chatter in the background. Candles lit on the table. All smiles for the guests. But behind the scenes? Chaos. No lights, no working stove, no Wi-Fi, no idea what was happening. She looked at me, concerned. Ryan, why didn't you? Before she could finish, another voice cut in. Jessica. Are you serious? He picked up the call now, after ruining the whole day? Then came Dad. Don't even look at him. He's making a point. He wants attention. What kind of man does this to his own mother? Then Jessica's voice again, closer now, sharper. He's jealous. That's what this is. He can't stand that someone like Ethan actually has his life together. That name hit harder than I expected. Ethan. The boyfriend. The lawyer. The man I wasn't good enough to be seen next to. And right then, like fate had cued the scene for dramatic effect. He walked into frame. Face confused. A drink in hand. He looked over at the screen casually until he saw me. And froze. He didn't speak at first. Ethan just stood there in the dim light of the kitchen, the soft hum of background chatter still moving around him like white noise. Someone was laughing near the hallway. A child called out for juice. A tray clattered against a counter. But in that tiny square on my screen, everything between the two of us had gone eerily still. He looked down at the screen again, squinting like maybe the pixels were playing tricks on him, like maybe he wasn't seeing what he thought he was seeing. "Wait," he said finally, voice quieter now, more careful. "You're Ryan?" The room didn't register it right away. No one was really listening except Aunt Linda, who slowly turned her head like she knew something strange was happening. "Ryan Bennett?" Ethan said again. Louder. This time his voice carried. I stayed still. Didn't blink. Didn't smile. I watched him as recognition dawned in stages. First confusion. Then disbelief. And then something heavier, like awe tangled up with panic. He stepped closer to the phone, brushing past someone who was trying to offer him a plate of cheese cubes. Oh my God. "Are you the Ryan Bennett from Altira Group?" he asked, eyes wide now. "You're the investor who saved our company last spring?" His voice broke a little at the end. And just like that, the silence in the room snapped into place like a dropped glass hitting tile. Someone near the table stopped mid-laugh. A chair scraped across the floor. The clatter of forks and low conversations dissolved into this tight, charged quiet that made the air seem thick and wrong. You could feel it even through a screen. I didn't answer. I didn't have to. I just nodded. Once. Ethan turned his head to the side, glancing behind the camera, scanning the room like he suddenly couldn't understand where he was or who these people were. Then he turned back toward the screen and ran a hand through his hair, slowly exhaling. "Jesus," he said under his breath. "I had no idea. I didn't even know you two were related." Aunt Linda hadn't moved. She just stared at me, something unreadable crossing her face. In the background I heard someone whisper urgently, nervously, "What did he just say?" Another voice, older, hissed back. "Ryan is... who?" "He's the investor." And then Jessica, walking into frame now, red-faced and trembling. "This is ridiculous," she said, her arms crossed so tightly I could see her nails digging into her elbows. "So what if he put some money in something? That doesn't mean..." But Ethan turned to her. "It wasn't some money, Jess," he said, his voice sharp now. "Without that bridge funding my company would have folded in 6 weeks. We were dead in the water." He looked back at the phone. "You saved everything. I can't believe I never connected the dots. I never even thanked you properly." I tilted my head slightly, watching the panic bloom behind Jessica's eyes. The way her smile had crumpled. The way her posture collapsed under the weight of a truth she had no way of spinning. And I still hadn't said a single word. Aunt Linda cleared her throat. She leaned in a little closer, whispering but not soft enough to mute it. "They didn't want you here, Ryan," she said. "Your dad said it'd make the evening uncomfortable. They thought Ethan might be embarrassed." I looked at her. My face didn't change. I didn't need it to. Ethan blinked rapidly, then stepped back, shaking his head in disbelief. "Embarrassed?" he repeated, like the word tasted awful in his mouth. "He's the reason I have this job." Jessica reached for his arm, but he pulled away, not harshly, but firmly. "Why didn't you tell me?" he asked her, voice low now. "Why wouldn't you say who your brother was?" Her mouth opened. Then closed. Then it opened again. "It didn't seem relevant," she mumbled. He stared at her like she'd just kicked a puppy in public. "It's not just relevant, Jessica. It's a character. It's integrity. It's everything I respect." And that was the moment the room shifted, not because someone yelled or stormed off, but because no one said anything at all. You could feel the recalibration happening in real time. The balance of power slipping from the hands that had always held it without question. I let the silence stretch. I didn't need an apology. I didn't want one. I wasn't interested in whatever performance would come next. So I did the only thing that still felt honest. Hope your big introduction goes perfectly, I said calmly. And I ended the call. That night I slept deeper than I had in months. Not out of triumph, and not out of spite. Just stillness. Like the house itself had finally stopped buzzing with old expectations. Like my body finally realized it didn't have to brace itself for another insult disguised as tradition. I woke up early the next morning and brewed a fresh pot of coffee. 10 minutes later my phone buzzed with a text. It was Jessica. Please, just talk to him. He's pulling away. I didn't know who you were. I stared at it for a while. Then typed back. He's not pulling away because of me. He saw how you treat people you think are beneath you. A minute later, another message arrived. I messed up. I know that. Just give me a chance. Please. I'll change. It happened 5 days later. I was coming back from the grocery store, 2 paper bags in hand, still damp at the bottom from a leaky bottle of oat milk, when I saw the car parked at the edge of the driveway. I didn't recognize it right away. I stood there for a second, squinting at the plates, the dusty rearview mirror, the crumpled fast food wrapper on the dashboard. And then I saw my father step out of the passenger side. He looked smaller than I remembered. Or maybe the years had finally caught up to his shoulders, dragging them forward just enough to make him seem older than I ever let myself imagine. He didn't speak. Just stood there, waiting like someone who didn't know if he was still allowed to knock. Then the driver's door opened. My mother climbed out. Her floral blouse wrinkled. Her hair pinned in a way that told me she'd really tried to look composed. In her left hand was a plastic grocery bag. Inside I could see the familiar red and white box from Mom's favorite bakery. Cherry almond cake. Same as always. They came to my house with a peace offering in one hand and a suitcase in the other. I didn't invite them in. I just opened the door and stepped aside. Not out of kindness, not out of forgiveness, but because I didn't want to have that conversation on the front porch, where the neighbors could watch us unravel. Inside, the house smelled like roasted coffee and lemon cleaner. The kitchen light buzzed faintly, a bulb I'd been meaning to replace. I didn't offer them tea, they didn't ask. We sat in the living room, an awkward triangle of silence and distance. My father rested his hand on his knee, fidgeting with the crease of his pants like it was something to hold on to. My mother was the first to speak. We've been thinking about what happened, she began, her voice soft like tissue paper. About the birthday. And maybe things got out of hand. I didn't answer. I just waited. Your father didn't mean what he said, she added. It was the pressure, the guests. Jessica was nervous and... Enough, my father cut in. We came to clear the air, and maybe talk about the future. That word future tasted too deliberate. We're family, he said slowly. And family helps each other, right? I still didn't speak. He sat up straighter now, pushing past the apology like it had been a toll booth he only had to roll through. You've done well for yourself, we're proud of that, he said. You're in a position to help now, and we're not asking for much. Then came the line I knew was coming. If you could maybe send us $2,000 a month, just to help out a little. It's not a lot for someone like you. He said it like it was a compliment, like he was doing me the honor of acknowledging my success. And that's when I realized they hadn't come to apologize. They'd come to collect. I leaned back in the chair. Not angry. Not surprised. Just tired. What about Jessica? I asked quietly. How much is she contributing every month? The air shifted. Slightly. Like someone had opened a window and let in a breeze no one wanted. My mother glanced at my father. He cleared his throat. Well, she's still trying to get back on her feet. The breakup hit her hard. Ethan was her golden ticket. I finished for him. Until he realized who she really was. The silence after that was sharp and prickly. I stood up and walked to the window, watching the soft sunlight drift through the curtain. My voice was calm when I spoke again. If Jessica agrees to contribute $2,000 a month, I'll match it. No more, no less. I turned and looked at them. Or, if you want me to cover everything myself, I'll need something in writing. A legal agreement. When you both pass, the house becomes mine. Full ownership. No contest. My mother gasped. Like I'd slapped her. My father's eyes narrowed. You're setting conditions for your own parents? No, I said. I'm setting boundaries. For the first time in my life. His hands clenched against the armrest. I could see the vein twitching in his jaw. We raised you. he snapped. 20 years of food, school, clothes. And this is what we get? You raised me to be useful, I said, voice steady. And now that I'm not useful in the way you expected, you don't know what to do with me. He stood up so fast the teacup next to him tipped, clinking loudly as it spun and spilled across the wood floor. You think money makes you better than us? He barked. That just because you have some investment crap going, you can act like you're above this family? No, I said. I think the way you treat people shows who you are. I'm just finally acting accordingly. My mother tried to stand between us. Please, she whispered. This isn't why we came. I looked at her. Really looked. Her eyes were full of something I hadn't seen before. Not sadness, not guilt, but fear. Not for me, but for what was slipping away. Because the golden child had failed. The son she ignored was the last option. And they knew it. They left without another word. I didn't slam the door. I didn't watch them walk to the car. I just sat back down, hands resting on the same table where they'd tried to rebrand their apology as a transaction. And I realized something. They didn't come back because they missed me. They came back because there was nowhere else to go. 3 days passed before I heard from her. Jessica. The name popped up on my phone while I was answering emails, her contact still saved from years ago. For a second I just stared at it. Not because I was surprised, but because some part of me had been waiting for it. Like standing in a quiet room and suddenly hearing the soft rattle of a snake under the floorboards. Her message was short, measured. Can we talk? Just us. I'll be outside around 7. No apology. No explanation. No hint of whether this was a peace offering or another performance. But part of me already knew. She showed up 10 minutes early. Same practiced smile. Same light perfume that reminded me of graduation day and staged family photos. She was wearing a muted dress, heels too high for someone pretending to be casual, and a scarf around her neck even though it was 74 degrees outside. I opened the door, said nothing, and let her walk in first. We sat in the living room again, just like our parents had. Except this time, I didn't even pretend to make small talk. I just waited. Jessica looked around the room like she was searching for a weak spot in the walls. Nice place, she said finally. I didn't respond. You always liked quiet spaces. Still, I said nothing. She fidgeted with the edge of her scarf, then leaned forward slightly, voice soft. Look. I know we haven't always been close. That sentence hung in the air like an insult trying to wear a disguise. I messed up, she said. With Ethan. With the way I treated you. I didn't see things clearly before. She paused. But I do now. I tilted my head. Not because I believed her, but because I'd seen this act before, just never from this close. You're not here to say sorry, I said calmly. You're here because something fell apart. She blinked. That pause, barely half a second, was all I needed. I'm not asking for anything, she said quickly. I've lost a lot this month. Ethan's gone. Mom and Dad are stressed. And I thought maybe we could start over. Start over. As if the past could be swapped out like a sofa cushion. I watched her carefully. The nervous tapping of her heel. The faint tremble in her voice whenever she said Ethan's name. The fact that she kept glancing toward my home office like she was remembering something or trying to pretend she hadn't. You didn't come here for me, I said. You came here because you need something. Jessica's smile faltered. The mask slipped. Ryan. So just say it, I continued. Whatever it is. Let's stop wasting time. She hesitated, then exhaled slowly, like she'd been waiting for permission. All right, she said. Fine, you're right. She reached into her purse and pulled out a folder. My stomach tightened, not out of fear, but recognition. Because I already knew what was inside before she slid it across the coffee table. It was a business proposal. Well, more like a plea in disguise. Inside was a pitch deck badly formatted, riddled with buzzwords, and a scanned sheet with her name printed next to a half-baked LLC. It's an online boutique, she began, voice rehearsed. Curated fashion, sustainable brands, influencer-led campaigns. I already have a designer, a TikTok partner, and a beta site in development. I flipped through the pages. No data, no projections. Just pastel branding and a dream. Jessica, I said quietly. What exactly do you want from me? She looked at me like I was being deliberately obtuse. You're an investor, she said. This is what you do. I invest in systems that work, I replied. not fantasies you stitched together in a panic. Her face hardened. You don't have to be cruel. You don't have to be entitled. She flinched, then crossed her arms, shifting in her seat. Ethan told me you believed in giving people chances. Ethan believed in people who respected the opportunity. She sat back, staring at me like I'd just shut a door she wasn't used to having locked. This could change everything for me, she whispered. Then build it, I said. But not with my money. Her voice turned cold. You think this is about money? You think I came here begging? You came with a folder full of debt and a pitch made out of buzzwords, I said. And you expected me to nod along because you're my sister. I am your sister, she snapped. Exactly, I said, standing up. You should have treated me like one. She stood too, face flushed now. Her hand shook slightly as she grabbed the folder back. You act like you've always been better than the rest of us, she said. But you just got lucky. That's it. You're not smarter. You're not stronger. You're just the one who got out. I stared at her for a long moment. And you're the one who stayed, I said softly. Even when you knew the house was rotting from the inside. She stormed out 5 minutes later. Didn't slam the door, didn't say goodbye. Just left the scarf on the couch and disappeared into the driveway like she'd never been here at all. But I wasn't angry. I was tired. Because the most dangerous kind of family isn't the one that cuts you off. It's the one that keeps showing up only when they need something. I didn't hear from her again for 10 days, not a text, not a missed call, not even one of those empty forwarded memes she used to send during the holidays, the ones with glittery angels and captions like, "Family is forever." I assumed she'd taken the rejection and moved on, or at least retreated to find a new angle. And honestly, I let myself breathe again. I got back to work. My team closed a funding round. I spent 2 weekends reading in silence. For the first time in months, it felt like things were settling. Until my inbox lit up with a strange subject line. Excited to collaborate. Let's talk about traction. At first I thought it was spam. But when I clicked, my stomach turned. The email was from a fashion consultant in LA, a woman I'd never spoken to, thanking me for our involvement and silent backing of a startup called Orem and Ivy, Jessica's brand. She'd used my name. Not just mentioned in passing. No, she had presented me as a silent financial backer in pitch decks, slides, calls, social media teasers. I opened Instagram. It was her post from 2 days ago. So excited to announce that Orem and Ivy has secured strategic support from a former Altira Group partner. Ready to scale ethically, beautifully, and boldly. I stared at the screen, jaw locked. There was no logo, no direct tag. Just a vague nod. But it was enough, just enough to imply me without actually saying it. So that when people connected the dots, she'd have room to deny she ever said my name out loud. It was manipulative. Calculated. Brilliantly, disgustingly familiar. I didn't respond to the email. I didn't call her. I didn't text. I took screenshots. Logged the timestamps. Pulled the metadata from the website where she'd submitted her brand story. And then I called my attorney. 3 days later, the knock came. Not a buzz. Not a text warning. Just knock low, deliberate, and patient. I opened the door, and there they were. My parents. And a man in a blazer holding a folder. I didn't say a word. Just stepped aside. The man introduced himself as David Lang, their family lawyer. My father spoke first. We didn't want it to come to this, Ryan. He said, like someone rehearsing a line they didn't believe. But you left us no choice. I sat down slowly, keeping my eyes on the folder. Go ahead, I said. Say it. My mother looked nervous, like even she hadn't expected the visit to play out like this. Lang cleared his throat. Your parents are initiating a revision of the family estate, he began. They would like to ensure that certain assets, specifically the home, are not contested after their passing. He slid a document across the table. They are asking you to sign a release. You waive any future claim to the property or related holdings. In return, they will not pursue restitution for what they consider unauthorized financial interference. I blinked. Restitution? I repeated. My father nodded. Cold, mechanical. You canceled the payments. That disrupted utilities. Embarrassed us. Ruined your mother's birthday. We had guests, Ryan. You made a scene. I stared at him. Then I laughed. Not loud. Not bitter. Just a soft, breathless kind of laugh, the sound you make when someone tells you the house they burned down was your fault for not bringing water. You kicked me out of my mother's birthday, I said slowly. And now you're suing me for the aftermath? We're not suing, my mother said quickly, like she wanted to sound reasonable. We're just protecting what's ours. You mean Jessica's, I said. This is about her. They didn't respond. I pushed the document back toward Lang. I'm not signing anything, I said. And if you move forward with this, I'll respond in kind. My father's jaw tensed. We don't want a war, Ryan. You started one, I replied. You just didn't think I'd show up this time. They left shortly after. The lawyer was polite. My parents weren't. As they stepped onto the porch, my mother turned back, her voice shaking. Jessica's all we have now. Then I hope she invests better than she pitches, I said. She didn't reply. I didn't go back to work that afternoon. I sat by the window, watching the clouds roll over the treetops, letting the storm in my chest churn quietly and sync with the sky. I wasn't angry anymore, I was alert. Because this wasn't just a family drama. This was reputation warfare. Jessica had used my name, twisted it, diluted it into a prop. And now my parents were trying to legally erase me from the only legacy they'd ever promised. Not because I'd done something wrong, but because I'd stopped asking to belong.